Welcome to Lawyers Who Learn, where we explore how attorneys' engagement and lifelong learning fuels their growth. Join us to uncover these journeys and gain insights for your legal career.
Brian Chase, thank you so much for being on Lawyers Who Learn. I'm super excited to have some really deep conversations about technology, teaching, AI, and all the like. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me today.
Lawyers Who Learn is about understanding how you as an attorney have learned throughout your career, but the topics that I want to focus on today, and generally we end up with a theme that either I have going in or it kind of develops as we go. Like there's two areas that are super interesting to me. You have taught, I don't know, like a dozen courses with Lawline, or at least that's are active today.
Yep.
And certainly the company that you're at, ArcherHall, and I see on the site, it's a big strategy of yours. You're a teacher at, I had it written down. It's a law school. Give me a second. I wrote it down and I don't even see it. Was it Arizona? No.
University of Arizona.
University of Arizona. And to me, and what I think is really interesting and relevant right now is for consumers and for lawyers, what does all these connected devices mean for us today? What have you learned in that process? And one of the courses that really stood out to me, and maybe we'll talk about 2 or 3 courses, is AI generated evidence. And I don't know how we're going to deal with that. So lots to talk about.
Yeah. Just a few things there.
But let's start. Just if you could just level set us with a little bit about your background, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So I kind of started off in law. I had a technology background. I worked in IT while in law school. Started out practicing law. I did plaintiff personal injury and criminal defense. Kind of discovered this field of digital forensics, became interested in it, started taking classes specific to digital forensics, kind of supplement my undergrad IT experience, and then started doing it. I opened my own law firm. I had my own digital forensics company. I did ran both of those companies for a number of years until I joined ArcherHall, who I'm with now, and I run our operations team, which is digital forensics and e-discovery, and we do that work all over the country.
Just as an aside, I'm curious, many lawyers go through different transitions in their careers. What was the decision making when you went from being on your own to going to ArcherHall?
It was a number of things. So I really liked the expert witness work that I was doing, the digital forensics work. But the legal job, my law firm, was what was paying the bills. Yeah, that's where I was making the money. And because of that, it was really hard to spend time developing the digital forensics business and getting more work in. Any hour I spent marketing that was one less hour I spent on the law firm. And so it was really hard to make that transition. So I saw in 2019, I saw ArcherHall had this job posting for a director. And one of the things that really intrigued me about it is they wanted somebody who could teach CLEs. And that's one of the methods I had for marketing my digital forensics company. So I applied and got hired. And so that made that transition to doing full-time digital forensics and stop practicing law really easy at that point, as I then had a kind of salaried position and didn't need to rely on the law firm anymore.
Okay. I'm glad I asked that. That's fascinating. So tell us a little bit about that strategy, about teaching CLEs. How many different CLE programs do you teach? And how do you learn enough? Well, let's start with those 2 questions because we can dive in from there.
Yeah. So currently there's a number of CLE classes that I kind of have ready to go. And so if somebody says I need a CLE or want a CLE, I've got like a list ready that they could pick from, and I could deliver it the next day. I mean, I could deliver it the next hour if they wanted it to. CLEs has been the primary strategy of ArcherHall to develop business, is to show off our expertise by teaching lawyers. I probably average about 2 or 3 CLE presentations a week. I know in 2022 or 2023, I ran the math on it one time. I think I had delivered 120 CLEs over the course of the year.
And when you do 2 or 3 a week, is it generally for law firms, for who are you doing it to?
Yeah, it's law firms, it's legal organizations, so state, county bar associations, practice groups, certainly Lawline. Most of the audience is going to be local bar associations like city or county level and law firms.
And just because this is a lead generation opportunity, you're not charging for any of this. This is just more about getting ArcherHall and the knowledge that you have out there. Correct?
Right. Yep. It's absolutely free. We have a whole team kind of
Yeah.
dedicated to support that effort, that CLE effort, and that the whole idea behind it is to kind of share our knowledge. One of the theories that we have is lawyers just don't know about digital evidence, and so
Yeah.
they're just missing it in cases. And so one of the things we want to do is show them the things that they are missing, the data out there that could support their case, whether they hire us or another expert. At least they're learning that there's this whole area where there's data that could be supporting the claims that they're making.
I've always been a big proponent. Teaching is the best form of learning.
Yeah.
How do you how do you go about creating over a dozen courses and knowing them? Just take us through that process, and let's keep in mind the person who potentially wants to teach a CLE program and they don't know where to start. How do they go about going through that process?
Yeah, it is a great way to learn because some of the times I'm creating a new CLE, it's something that I'm like, this I think could be valuable, but I don't know yet. And so I might commit to a topic and then I have to go research it and develop the material for it. So the AI one is a perfect example. I taught that one for Lawline, or we recorded it maybe a couple months ago. I created it
What's the
in
title?
it is Truth or Tech,
Yeah.
and it is about AI generated evidence.
Great.
I created it for a family law conference. I was asked to speak at this conference, and they wanted new issues in family law. And so I was kind of looking through our cases that we had had over the past year to see, what trends might have been there. I asked other experts in our company, and didn't find a lot new. But then this was kind of while all of the chat GPT stuff was coming out, how the image generation and video generation. And I was kind of thinking about how that's going to be used in court. And so I decided that was really the focus. And so I started doing more research into that area, and developed this presentation kind of about how easy it is to now generate fake videos, audio, all sorts of things, and how our rules of evidence are really not equipped to deal with it. And so I kind of created that for that particular conference. And that's often how these things come about, is I'm asked to speak on some
Totally.
issue or some emerging technology, and I say yes, and then I have to go figure out how I'm going to do it.
I completely do the same thing, and I agree. What is your process? Let's talk, and I want to dive into that course. I don't know if it's a new course, but I would assume it's one of the more popular courses right now that people would want to know. But what is, like, how many hours did it take to create this 1 hour presentation? Did you just do a brain dump and then sort of organize it afterwards? You put into ChatGPT and help you organize it? Like, let's say I want to create a course on the ethics behind running a CLE company. I don't know, or the digital tools you need as a lawyer to teach your own CLE course. What do you do? What have you done to do this? And you've obviously created some sort of template to be able to do this and recreate it for so many different programs, or maybe not.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a template. I think one thing that's different about a lot of the CLEs that I teach compared to other presenters is I'm always teaching on technology topics. And I'm usually teaching kind of ahead of the curve, at least when it's comparing it to the legal field. So I'm not drawing on appellate case law, which is our typical CLE, a case law update. Here's what happened in employment law, personal injury law, and it's all drawing on cases and what can we learn. I'm usually presenting this stuff before it gets to appellate courts. So I can't do the typical research you might do. So instead, I might be looking at law review articles. Sometimes even then they're too slow because of how long it takes to draft an article and submit it and get it published. So sometimes I'm looking at news sources. A lot of my CLEs depend on tech publications. I might read tech publications and see what they're saying about it. I will look at things like Raw Review. I look at trial court opinions if I can find them. I look at news, just general news. One of the cases I talk about in that CLE, I read about in I don't know, NBC or something like that. It was a trial court decision, hadn't really made its way. It certainly hadn't made its way to its appellate court, hadn't really been picked up by a lot of law review articles yet. So I just kind of start Googling the topic and seeing what I can find. I just don't limit myself to legal resources because so many of these things are kind of cutting edge and are happening now. And I'm trying to educate attorneys about this is what's happening now. You might see it in a case in 30 days or in 6 months, but we probably won't have any sort of case law on it for another couple of years.
Okay, so you have lots of different sources. You start collecting information from your personal experience to articles to potentially trying the tech yourself.
Yep.
How many, for this course, Truth or Tech, Navigating AI General Evidence in the Courtroom, how many hours do you think you spent gathering information?
For this one, I probably spent somewhere in the range of 20 or 30 hours putting it together.
Just gathering the information, not before you actually create.
Probably all told. So gathering it and then
okay.
kind of putting it together. I think for me personally, putting it together is the least amount of time. By the time I actually sit down to start like drafting the PowerPoint that I'm going to use, I already kind of have a mental model of what I'm going to do and the ordering I'm going to do it. So that part usually doesn't take me too long. I don't tend to do like an outline. As I'm kind of gathering the information, I'm already kind of thinking about how am I going to present this? What's the ordering I'm going to present it?
And I would assume you use some AI, ChatGPT, Claude, or something to help you even organize and create thematically, just to help organize the data at this stage. I feel like it's criminal not to do that, like to help with data, but maybe you don't. I don't know. I'm just curious.
I don't actually. I have used them for.
I had a feeling because you're experienced, but
yeah, I certainly have used the AI tools for other purposes, but I haven't used them yet for creating a presentation or even kind of organizing my thoughts on a presentation. I have used them for like my favorite one right now is a tool, Notebook LM from Google, where you can upload a bunch of resources to it and then ask it questions. And so I have, put in a bunch of case law and law review and all sorts of articles, and then I will ask it a question or ask it to kind of pull out ideas. And I have used tools like that. Didn't really use them for this presentation though.
Just out of curiosity, Notebook LM, Claude, or ChatGPT, obviously there's more, but is there something specific about Notebook LM through Google that you like better than Claude or ChatGPT for that?
Yeah, a couple things. One, it's free, so you don't have to have a paid account. They have said that they keep the data private to your account. So you can upload data and it won't become part of the training material. If you use a free ChatGPT account, you don't have that same privacy protection. You can use a paid account, but then you're paying for it. So I'm not using them enough to really justify a paid account. So Notebook LM works really well, and I've just had really good experiences with it. I've tested it with kind of known material to see the results I get back, that I can kind of see how well it does with querying that data, and it works really well.
Great. Well, thank you for taking me through that. I won't get into the substance. It just, as I said to you before, and I'll just say it on air as well, is like when we spoke to our production team, they said you're one of our favorite faculty members to work with, and we have, I think, close to a dozen courses of yours live on the site. So that I really, first of all, thank you for doing that. I know this is what you do, but we appreciate that, and I see, thousands of completions of your courses. And I'm curious, do you ever hear from anyone who's completed a course, whether let's on Lawline, let's speak there, and I'd love to hear it, because sometimes there's stories, with so many courses, somebody's been in court or they've been on the street or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I do get emails from people. I certainly have had cases come in, so it's been successful for that kind of business development side.
Yeah.
But I will occasionally hear from people too, just that they really enjoyed it. I'll get an email saying that it really helped me. They don't tend to give me a lot of case specifics when I get those emails, but I do hear from people that say that they enjoyed the presentation, or they use something from it in a case that they're working on right now. Or they wish they had taken it a year ago when they were working on this case, and they wish they had seen it then. But certainly, I think there are more people watching those Lawline CLEs that have done than any of the other kind of distribution methods of CLEs. They're really popular. Get a lot of great feedback from them.
Yeah, no, and I watched the AI generated evidence course. And that's certainly what I want to dive into in a minute. But since we're still focused on teaching, I just wanted to ask you, you teach at Arizona, you said Arizona Law School? Is that what it was?
University of Arizona.
University of Arizona. Um, Obviously, how do you find the time? But like, what are you teaching on? How do you find the time? What did you develop for that? Because it just seems like there's a lot of developing of content and courses, and I wish I can do all those things, and I'm sure other people too. So I just want to get a sense of that.
Yeah, so I've been teaching the same class there for 11 years. So I haven't had to develop anything really new for it in a while. It's actually completely unrelated to the work I do now. I teach
Okay.
the trial competition program, the mock trial team. I was on that team as a student at the law school there. When the coach that was teaching it when I was there left and moved out of state, I kind of took over the program. So I'm just coaching the students on trial advocacy abilities, and they compete in a mock trial competition every
Cool.
year.
Awesome. And so now how often do you teach that course?
So during most of the school year, it's twice a week. As we get ready for the competition, we increase it to 3 times a week. Each class period as we get close to competition, about 3 to 4 hours. So it's a lot of time leading up to the competition.
Got it. Cool. And where in Arizona are you?
Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson. Awesome. All right. Now I'm going to switch the focus and actually talk about AI and some of the things that you've talked about in a few of the courses on Lawline. And I think this is applicable not just to attorneys, but to everybody. But let's talk about some of the things that you've learned and discovered and shared. It was really it was a little bit scary when you think about how you can create fake evidence with AI. Can you speak a little bit about that and where you see things going, and just what are some examples that you've seen that are happening or that could happen?
Yeah, so the new AI tools that are out there allow individuals to fairly easily modify images by things like as simple as removing backgrounds from pictures, but even adding to pictures. You can type into a chat bot and say, add a sinkhole to this picture, place a bomb on this picture, place drugs on this picture, and it will do that. And it looks very convincing. You can do the same kinds of things with audio. You need about 30 seconds to a minute of somebody's audio. You can run it through an AI tool and kind of make that person say whatever you want. We've had tools like this in the past. Photoshop, for example, could allow you to add drugs or a bomb to a picture, but you had to have skill and it took time. The AI tools really changed the game because now you don't need that. You just have to have the ability to access the tool, which everybody can do. And so it makes the ease and speed at which you can develop these fake images, videos, audio, even handwriting, so much easier. And so I think that's going to be a challenge because when you look at how we deal with something like a photograph in court, the way to admit a photograph is really basic. It's governed by authentication rules, Rule 901 and Federal Rules of Evidence, and you have to provide enough evidence from which the jury could find the photo is real. Typically, it's 1 or 2 questions of a witness. Does this picture fairly and accurately depict what you saw that day? The witness says yes, the judge admits the picture. So it's a very low standard, and if somebody's trying to maliciously introduce photos, if you have a client that says, yeah, this is a photo of my ex taking drugs, and you're in a family law proceeding and you put your client on the stand, you show them the picture, and the witness says, yes, that's my ex, and there they are with drugs, the judge should admit that photo, but we really don't have any way to guard against that being generated by AI.
Well, it goes both ways, because if it is a real photo, the ex can also say, no, that's not a real photo.
Right.
And so, and what you were saying in your course, the tools to detect it lag behind the tools to create it. And of course, it's only going to get better and better. There's 11 labs that can take your voice and create that pretty quickly. That's only going to get better. And signatures can be copied very easily. And there's things that I'm not even thinking about that are happening here. So how is what do you think is going to have to adapt or change when you don't know what's true or not true in a court of law? Yeah, what do we do?
Yeah, I wish I had good answers. It's the one CLE class that I've developed where I don't feel like I have concrete suggestions for people. Usually, I try to offer some real concrete steps you can take. I like to wrap up by saying, here are the like three things, five things that you can do. And I'm really not sure. There are some things that are happening, which I think will be positive. The committee that puts together the U.S. Federal Rules of Evidence. They're looking into this. They recognize that this is an issue, so they're trying to think about ways to deal with it. There are companies out there that are trying to make tools to detect these things, and they are coming along and making progress. Some of them work decently well now, but it's still hit or miss. It's still really tough to determine. So I think it's for a while, we're not going to have clear answers. And I think one of the things that's going to be challenging, especially in the jury trial realm, is I think jurors are going to start to be more and more skeptical of all of this evidence. So whether it's real or not, how do you prove something to be real or prove it to be AI? But a jury might be thinking there, if they don't hear that testimony about why this is real, they might be very skeptical of anything that they see as more and more of this kind of makes its way into kind of the mainstream and they see more news articles about it. So I think we've got some really potentially rocky roads ahead.
Yeah. For sure, is there anything else from the AI generated evidence that you learned in preparing that course that kind of either shocked you or like you still don't have the answers for that besides what we brought up?
I think just the ease of generating it. I think a lot of people out there think, oh, I can spot it because they've seen the really bad ones. They've seen the ones with people with 7 fingers on their hand. And so as I was going through it, I was finding all of these examples of AI generated material. And one of the things I've done in this presentation is specifically when I do it live and I have an audience that I can interact with, is I'll ask people to raise their hands and say, which one do you think is real? And I have probably presented this to live audiences, probably presented to maybe 300 or 400 people at this point. And out of all of those, only one person got every single situation right. So when you think about that, and you realize, well, one person out of 300 or 400 was able to identify every single AI generated one. Everybody else got at least one of them wrong. It really shows we as humans don't have the skill set we think we do in identifying AI generated material.
Yeah, I mean, to me that this is transformational. The rules from the rules of evidence and it's just one aspect of what's happening in law. It's hard to keep up with it all. I mean, but on a similar note, another course you taught for us is my ex hacked me.
Yep.
Hard to say that one. My ex hacked me. The truth about cyberstalking, and in a way, to take us through that. What was the biggest thing that you learned, or what was the most surprising thing when you started doing research in that area?
Yeah, that one didn't require as much research because this basically was created to deal with a very common call that we get in our office, usually from family law practitioners, but not always, which is, my ex hacked my phone. They're reading my emails. They know where I was yesterday, those kinds of things. And we've worked a number of those cases, and very, very rarely, it's extremely rare that there's any form of hacking going on. And so the idea with that presentation was really just to educate mostly family law practitioners, but not limited there, on things that they can do with their client before they ever call an expert. Because usually what's happening is it's a cloud access somewhere. Somebody knows a Google password, an Apple password, and they're just logging in remotely. And so we wanted to walk through kind of all of the different ways that these things typically happen that is not hacking of the phone. And what tends to happen is a lot of people have no idea the amount of data that they are sharing online that is accessible just with their own username and password. And so that their spouse has access to because they know the password or they have a laptop or a tablet that's logged in, just have no idea how much they're being tracked by all of these services they use.
And when I think it's a good segue to talk about two courses at the same time, because I feel like this is fun to kind of go through your courses and talk about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's cool. Um, it's rare to be able to do that and have such a buffet of courses to choose from. But another one that's really you taught in 2021 that's still on our site is if your home is spying on you, how to
Yep.
use smart device data in litigation.
Mhm.
And a lot of what you say is how much of your data is in the cloud. And it
Yep.
spoke to me because I have a Fitbit and
Yep.
talked about it. Very rarely do when if they need to get your data actually get into your Fitbit, it's all in the cloud. So
Yep.
to just out of curiosity, what did you learn and what did you share about what is what is in the cloud? What are things that we're not aware of that you mentioned about your X and about Fitbit and other things like that that is just happening right now?
Yeah, I mean, those two are definitely very related courses. There's so much that's going up into the cloud. So Fitbit's a great example because you've got an app on your phone, but what's happening is that app is sending data up to the cloud. Fitbit's now owned by Google, so Google has that data. But Google's also tracking things like, your browser history if you use Chrome, your search history on Google, your YouTube viewing history, your purchases if you use Google Pay, Google Classroom, Gmail, Google Photos, Google. I mean, you think about all these different products that Google has, and that's just one company. But most of what we do nowadays, when you think about any app on your phone, that's cloud data. That's data that's going up to the cloud. Snapchat has your location data. Facebook's got data. Every kind of device that you install in your home that's connecting to your Wi-Fi is sharing data in the cloud. That's how most of these devices work. And that's why a lot of the stuff that we use is free, is because that data is what's the company's making money on. They're making money off of having your data, mining your data, selling you advertisements, selling it to data brokers. And all of that data is out there and able to be used in litigation.
After doing all this research and being an expert in this, have you made any changes in how you share your data with the cloud? Anything I should change or anything I
Yeah.
should delete?
So certainly don't have apps on your phone that you're not using. But there's no reason to. Yeah, if you're not using an app, get rid of it because it
Because
probably is tracking data,
using it still could be tracking you.
even if you're using it. So then for the apps that you
If you're
are,
not, I'm saying if you're not using it,
yeah,
just because you're not, if just being on your phone, it could be tracking you, even if it's not.
correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And why is just to be clear, what do you mean? Just it tracks your location or other things
It
like that.
can. So
Yeah.
when you install an app, it asks for permissions.
Yeah.
Most
No,
people
I
don't
understand.
pay
Yeah.
that close attention. So as long as it's there, even if you don't open it up, it still has those permissions and it might
Got
be
it.
able to monitor your phone calls or text messages, whatever
Fine.
permissions you gave it. And so
Clean,
that
clean,
data is still being tracked.
clean out the apps you're not using. Step one. What else?
Step
What else
one,
you
clean out those
give,
apps.
give us some more.
So for the apps that you do keep, be thinking about what's the trade-off here. What are the permissions? You can go in your settings and you can actually look at the permissions that it's allowed, and you can see what's the trade-off. Is this a valuable trade-off to me or not? So I have some apps that I allow to have access to my location, but some of them I'll set to only while that app is open. I'm trying to think
Totally.
of a good example.
Well, I do that with every app. Like
Yeah.
let's just keep on Fitbit for a second here. Like there's a trade off that I make in my head. Like I like to know my sleep and
Right.
my steps and my heartbeat and things like that. And it's funny because I had the old Fitbit, but then when Google bought them, I got a new one. I had to update it, and then it was like, "Give Google all your data." I'm like, I don't want to, but I have to. And
Yep.
now I'm that the trade off for me was like, what's ever going to happen? Like, what do I care if they have my heartbeat
Right.
and all this? Like, and so, but should I like, am I being that? Is it naivete? Like, what I can't do anything about that. Like,
Right.
that's what I think about is how many people have some sort of tracking on them, and so
Mhm.
all their health data is going to be out there,
Right.
um, at some point. But it seemed like in the course what you were talking about a lot was the tracking that somebody was somewhere at a time when they said they weren't. Is it
Yeah. There,
correct?
there's there's all sorts of ways that data could be used. So we'll take your Fitbit data. Right now you're making that trade-off. You're like, yeah, I know Google knows my steps, my distance walked, my heart rate. And then you get in the car to go do grocery shopping and you get rear-ended. And now you have a personal injury claim. And the defense lawyer wants to know, what was your daily life like before that injury versus after that injury? And your Fitbit data potentially becomes relevant and potentially needs to be disclosed in that personal injury case. Now you might have a different view on that data, knowing that, well, does the defense lawyer get to know how many steps I was taking every day before the crash versus after? The flip side of that is maybe that data is also very helpful.
Does he?
Depends. So some courts have said yes. I've certainly seen that data disclosed. Because if you're claiming this injury made, reduced my ability to exercise or walk around, that is data that would support those claims or contradict those claims and potentially becomes relevant in the litigation. I've certainly seen it used.
That's ridiculous. Wow. I mean, I get it. It's just like ridiculous to realize like the more you're tracking, the more you're opening yourself up for e-discovery or I don't even know if you call this e-discovery. I guess, would this be considered e-discovery or some other discovery?
So generally, we've put this in like digital forensics because the collection and analysis of that data usually falls in the digital forensics. E-discovery tends to be when you have a lot of data and you're starting to find the relevant data. Usually, we're dealing with like documents in that situation.
And just so I can understand, like the basic, most layman way to explain this. So you want my Fitbit steps? And you're the expert who has been hired. Mm-hmm. Are you like giving a subpoena to Google to allow you to have, like, what's that process?
So typically when we're hired as an expert, we're just logging into the account with username and password.
And they have to give up their password.
Yep, give up their password. We log in, we download the data, we filter it to whatever date range is relevant for that litigation, and then we produce it.
So as part of the court order, they are ordered to give up their personal password and access to that.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's just part of the civil discovery process. Yeah. So often it doesn't even get to a judge if they kind of agree to it.
Got it. Interesting. Yeah. We were talking about location. I'm trying to I'm feeling interesting segues of all your different courses. You also taught a course on Lawline using location data in litigation, from cell phones to cell towers and smart homes. Anything that we haven't covered in either of these other courses that was interesting or unique that you learned? And this, over 3,000 people completed this course.
Yeah, I think a lot of people kind of think, if I want to find out location data of somebody, I need to look at their cell phone. And that might work, but there's so many other sources out there. And one of the things as I was putting that presentation together that I was kind of realizing is sometimes the person saying, well, I wasn't there, I was at home. And so the smart home devices, things like a smart lock on your door or an Amazon Echo in your home, could actually support that. If you were talking to your Amazon Echo or you unlocked that smart lock, there's a record of that. And that can show when somebody is home or not. It might not be definitive proof, but it could be really strong circumstantial evidence that, yeah, somebody was at home, even though we don't have any GPS data, we don't have cell tower data, we don't have anything we would normally think of as location data, but just by using a smart device, we get that.
I think the theme that I'm getting from these courses so far is we know where you are. And even if you don't have your phone, there's digital forensic evidence that you're somewhere. Anything else besides that theme that I'm missing in that we should be aware of?
I think the even broader theme is we have data about everything you do. There's data just everywhere nowadays. Now, you can't always get access to it, but there's so much out there. And the message I try to teach lawyers is just think broadly. It's so much more than just a laptop or a cell phone when you're investigating a case. There's so many other sources out there that might have that relevant data you're looking for.
You taught a course called E-Discovery Hosted Review Platforms for Small and Mid-sized Law Firms. What's that about?
So hosted review is for when you've got lots of data and you need to find the relevant data. So let me give an easy example. Your client has email that's relevant to the litigation. You got to find it. So you go and you have them download their Gmail account, and their Gmail account has 100,000 emails in it. You're not going to read through 100,000 emails. So one easy way to deal with that is you put it into a hosted review platform. Relativity is the biggest name out there for a hosted review. And that allows you to run searches. You can divide up that work among your teammates. Everybody can do it. You can put notes. You can tag things. And so that course was about kind of educating people in the small and mid-sized space because large law firms already do this. They have whole teams dedicated to this. But the small firms, mid-sized firms often think, oh, this is way too expensive or way too complicated. And so we wanted to teach them it's not and actually can save you money and save you time. And there are tools out there that are cheaper than what the big law firms are doing. They have reasons for using theirs in their, massive litigation. But even in a small firm, small case, there can still be value in using those tools.
What does a tool like that usually cost, or does it depend on the size of the data?
It almost always depends on the size of the data, the amount of data. It's usually per gigabyte per month hosting cost. So the more data you have, the more expensive it can
Got
be.
it.
And the longer you leave it up there, the more invoices you're getting.
And a couple of years back, you also taught search and seizure in the digital realm.
Yep.
Is there anything specific to the digital realm that you learned in sort of preparing for that course, or that you shared or taught?
That is probably the most law-heavy class I teach. That's the exception to the one before. That was all based on case law research, and then kind of projecting it forward. But it's really a question of how do you take the Fourth Amendment, written by founding fathers, and apply it to digital evidence. They certainly weren't thinking about computers and cell phones and cloud data. So how do you translate the Fourth Amendment and Fifth Amendment principles to digital evidence? And we've had some really interesting case law there. That this is one there's constant updates for. This is one that we do tend to get a lot of appellate case law on. But the challenge is the technology is constantly evolving. And so you're taking case law that came out, dealing with the technology that was used at the arrest, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and now trying to apply it to the technology today.
Is there an example that you can think of that where search and seizure was overturned, or something where like it just didn't make sense, or I'm just trying to get a sense of like an example of what this looks like.
I think the most common area I'm seeing of this litigation now is over warrants for cell phones. Often law enforcement will get a warrant to search the entirety of a cell phone. And what the defense is now challenging is saying, wait a minute, that's way too broad. That's unreasonable under the Fourth Amendment. You had grounds to search for text messages after the incident because that's what your probable cause was based off of. Or you had grounds to look for photographs or browser history or something like that. So you don't get to look through all of my client's stuff. You have to narrow that search down to match up what you actually have, that particularized probable cause.
I love how I can bring up courses from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. You just got it. Like you have it all. The other chat.
That particular one is constant. Like I'm doing a CLE on Friday. That is an evolution of kind of where that started years ago. It's just that one's just constantly evolving. It's always a hot button issue.
What percentage of your time is teaching right now versus actually being a witness?
I would say probably about quarter of my time is dedicated to some area of that, either actual teaching or kind of the development of new classes or kind of thinking about some teaching material. Maybe it's a blog post or an article or an email blast or something like that. But probably about a quarter of my time goes into that.
Are there any new courses that you're currently developing or working on that really excite you?
Right now, I'm kind of at a lull. I need my next topic. The AI last one was the last big one. I'm going to probably start thinking about it again here soon, as conference season tends to be in the summer. So I'll probably start thinking about some new topics here in the next few weeks once I get past some upcoming trials.
How do you get your name out there? Like obviously you're doing it with Lawline, and maybe you reached out to us. I don't know how we originally connected, but how do you get your name out there? It's different with a provider because it's a win-win from the beginning. But how do you, what strategies and techniques have you used to be able to do 120 presentations a year at different firms and organizations that other organizations can follow in your footsteps to get? They might have 3 CLE courses that they've taught everybody. That is a strat. It's always been a strategy, right? It's a good loss leader, a good way to get in the door. Title insurance has been doing it for a long time. How can they use that to better to market themselves out there?
Yeah, I mean, easy steps is first just your local community, join your local bar associations, practice groups, and offer CLEs. A lot of times the smaller groups, the county or level bar associations, they're desperate for speakers. So those are always really easy to get into. And then from there, some of it is going to happen naturally. If you do a good job, people will watch and say, "Hey, can you come to present that to this other group or to my law firm?" Um, that gets you so far. That's a good start. We have a whole system built out. We have a team dedicated to it. So we have people dedicated to just emailing out law firms and bar associations saying, "Hey, we have free CLEs for you. Are you interested?" And we have a whole process that is developed just for that marketing material distribution that we do.
Have you ever thought about hosting your own courses, and in addition to going out there, allowing others to come directly to your site and take these courses? They can take it on Lawline, but they can also take it through ArcherHall.
Yeah, so we have a method like that. Every month we do a free, what we call open webinar. It's open to everybody. So we email it out to our whole list of clients. We post it on LinkedIn, and we'll get several hundred people that might attend. So every month it's kind of a new topic, usually kind of cycling through our existing topics. And so people can sign up for that. We occasionally record them and offer them through places like YouTube, and people can just go and get links for that. But mostly we do it through that open webinar. So once a month, it's kind of live. We like that kind of live feeling. So people can ask questions, we can answer them during that presentation.
Which makes sense. Yeah. And in the last couple of minutes, going back to you've done so many programs with Lawline and you've gotten a lot of people taking it. Any feedback, ideas, opportunities that you see that from working with us and teaching courses where we can add more value to the faculty experience, to the customer experience, to anywhere from our platform, to the content, to anything else that you've seen from that? I would love to hear and bring it back to the team.
Yeah, I mean, so I've done presentations for a lot of kind of online CLE distributors like Lawline. Lawline's always the smoothest from my perspective. The system, it works, everything it flows nicely. It's very easy from the faculty standpoint. I think even the result, the feedback I get from people is great. Like kind of every quarter, Lawline emails me and says, "Hey, here's the reviews you got." I read all of those. Every person who leaves a review that gets emailed to me, I read them because I want to know how can I improve the CLE.
Sure,
so I really am happy with kind of the way it works on Lawline. I think it's one of the smoothest ones out there. I haven't attended a lot as a attendee, so I don't really know the view side there. I've watched a few. I do so many conferences every year that I'm not at a loss for CLE credit by the end of the year. But
I was going to say you need time to do that.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things that we with over 22,000 courses is, and we actually built an AI tool into our programs as well, so you can search any course and ask it a question and kind of go through there, or you can do that to help you. We also created a way that it's not so obvious because we don't want to confuse people, but if you want to stop the tracking so you can fast forward the course and skip to any parts and take notes on it, we've allowed people to do that because I've always been focused on just-in-time learning. The credit's great, but certainly sometimes you really just need to know exactly one specific part of what you're saying and you can ask it there. So we've always been trying to work on that.
Yeah, I tried that AI tool when it came out, and I was really impressed. I did it on my own course because I wanted to see how well it did. So I tested it on one of my classes. I think I did it on the ethics of e-discovery class, or ethics of electronically stored information. And so I asked it some questions that I knew were in the presentation. I also asked it some things I knew were not in the presentation. And the results were perfect. Like it was really good. If people haven't tried that yet, they absolutely should. It's a great way to kind of supplement that experience. It worked really well.
Yeah, no, we're a lot of people still haven't because again, we promote it, but it's like there's so much out there and there's so many tools out there. Sometimes people are busy and they don't even know what to ask. They just want to watch a course and move on. So we're constantly trying to work on that and go through there. I really appreciate your time, and I know you're busy and you're constantly thinking. I aspire to teach as much as you do. I don't have substantive topics in those areas, but I'm very passionate about a lot of soft topics, leadership, comfort zone. And I wrote a book in 2019 about mindset. I'm writing my second book right now about our family moved to Barcelona and how we created personal freedom and the travel through that. So yeah, I want to teach more. Like, do you get that energy when you're in front of others and you're one thing to do through Zoom when you're
Yeah.
actually in person? Do you thrive off that?
In person is so much better. It doesn't compare to Zoom. I mean, Zoom is great because you can get out to more people than you ever would in person. You can really share that information, but in person, you get the feedback. You get to see people's reactions. When I'm develop a new one, I like to do it in person first, so I can watch their faces and see, are they getting it? Are they
Yeah,
nodding
totally.
along? And that knowing that people are understanding it, that's great. That's the goal with all of these. I'm envious of your ability to write, though. I've got a book that I've been working on for like 5 years. I still can't get it done. CLEs I have no problem with, right? Sitting down and writing, it takes me forever.
Well, this second book has been 5 years and going. It's just you start, you write it, you rewrite it. I actually, what I did, I hired an editor, so I have skin in the game and I have accountability, but it's just to get, because sometimes perfect is the enemy of good.
Yep.
And even though I have delusions of grandeur and I want 1 million people or 100,000 people to read the book, I also just want to get it out there because there's something inside me that needs to put it out there and share. One of the things I've been doing, and sometimes there's questions, sometimes they're not. I like to flip it and give you, since I feel like sometimes I interrogate people, give you the last word or the last question. Is there any questions that you have for me based on this conversation or this interview or your experience with Lawline that I could answer? That for you to give you put me on the hot seat at all.
Sure. Yeah. What's a goal that you've got for Lawline that you haven't achieved yet that you're striving for?
Oh, so many things. So I think I'll start with the largest overlapping thing that I've always wanted to get through. It's the process of lifelong learning, just-in-time learning beyond the CLE credit. And one of the areas that's been really interesting to see is a lot of professionals who are not attorneys, especially HR professionals, and other areas have been taking content to help them in courses in what they do. And so I would love to take what we've started with law and really expand into the business and professional and the space, because there's just so much, 30 to 40 to 50% of what we do relate to that. And so that is super interesting to me, but more specifically what we're doing right now. About last year, we developed a product that's our fastest growing product. And it's essentially accreditation services. So now we work with law firms and organizations. We built an online tool and platform that, we had it internally. And so we just built it externally that allows you to upload your courses, upload your content, track the reporting, track the CLE certifications, track everything. And then we also will host the content for you. So as an example, if ArcherHall wanted to host 15 courses, which we do that for some clients, and they do it internally, they put it out there, or they do a live webcast. We do that, and we streamline the certificates right away. It wasn't something that for years organizations were asking us to do this, and I just I don't know. We have to focus on what we do best. When enough people ask you see there's a clear pain point, and for actually getting the approvals and doing all that. So we've been doing that. It's growing really fast, and we're continuing to support that. So where we're focused in 2025 and beyond is the large law firm segment, the big organizations, and it's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know how different each state accreditation rules are and how difficult that must be for people trying to certify attorneys in multiple different jurisdictions.
And it's also, just time. Like if you focus on this, you're not focusing on something else. But I love speaking to people like you. The reason I started this podcast in last quarter, in 2006, I started my first podcast. It was a public access TV show interviewing entrepreneurs because I wanted to start my own business, and that led to the life I have today. So I wonder what will happen through meeting and talking to amazing people like you. Maybe we'll figure out ways to improve law, reduce costs for education. I would love to reduce the cost of legal education for law students, but that's like the third rail of education. So I don't know how to go there, but I really appreciate your time, Brian. I hope we can eventually meet in person. Do you ever make it to New York in your speaking?
Sometimes it's not
Okay.
often. A
Yeah.
lot more of mine is West Coast. I do
Makes
love New
sense.
York, so hopefully I'll
Yeah.
get another opportunity to
Yeah.
come out there
Till it's
soon.
warmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to join us and for being such a great faculty member.
Yeah, thanks for having me.